Around the World Lit Audio. Kokoro by Natsume Soseki. Part 1. Sensei and I. Sections 5 to 11. Full narration script. Channel intro. Welcome to Around the World Lit Audio, the greatest novels ever written, from every corner of the world, in English. New chapter every week, free to listen. Chapter recap. In week 1, the narrator, a young university student, was on summer holiday in Kamakura, when he noticed a man swimming alone in the sea each morning. The man was older, solitary, and carried about him a quality of withdrawal that the narrator could not name, and could not stop thinking about. Over several mornings he approached him cautiously. They exchanged almost nothing, but something was established between them, a thread. The narrator returned to Tokyo knowing he would seek this man out. He calls him Sensei. Part 1. Sections 5 through 11. Part 1. Sensei and I. Sections 5 to 11. Tokyo in autumn was different from Kamakura in summer. Kamakura had the openness of a resort town, the wide sea, the beach, the particular freedom of a place where people go to be temporarily released from their lives. Tokyo had no such release. Tokyo was the life itself, the narrow streets, the crowds, the university with its lecture halls and its deadlines, the boarding house with its walls so thin you could hear the family next door eating dinner. The narrator returned to his studies. He attended lectures. He took notes. He read. He did all the things that constitute being a student, and he did them with adequate competence, and they occupied his days without particularly filling them. He was thinking about Sensei, not obsessively, not in the way that young men think about women they have fallen in love with, which is constant and somewhat desperate, more in the way that a person returns to a problem that interests them, at intervals, with genuine curiosity, turning it over in the mind and finding it still interesting from every angle. He knew Sensei lived in Tokyo. He knew roughly which neighborhood. He had not sought him out yet. He was not sure why. One afternoon in early October he found himself in that neighborhood without having entirely intended to be there. He told himself he was simply walking. He did not believe himself, but the lie was comfortable enough to proceed with. He found the house. It was a modest house in a quiet residential street, the kind of house that reveals nothing about its inhabitants from the outside, a house that has decided to mind its own business and expects the same in return. A low gate, a small garden, a sliding door. He stood outside for a moment. Then he went in. He called at the door. A woman answered, Sensei's wife, though he did not know this yet. She was perhaps a few years younger than Sensei, with a face that had a quality of settled warmth, the quality of a woman who has made her peace with her circumstances, and found them, on balance, acceptable. She looked at him with the polite curiosity of someone accustomed to opening doors for strangers. He asked for Sensei. He gave his name and mentioned Kamakura. The woman smiled and told him to wait. He waited in the entrance hall and looked at the house, the particular quality of order in it, the cleanliness, the arrangement of objects that suggested a household run with care and without excess. There was nothing remarkable about any of it, but there was a quality of stillness in the house that he noticed, not the stillness of emptiness, but the stillness of a place where the inhabitants have learned not to make unnecessary noise. Sensei appeared. He looked at the narrator with the same expression he had worn on the beach, present and withdrawn simultaneously, a man standing slightly behind a window of his own making. But there was something else in the expression now, something that had not been there in Kamakura, something that might have been, very faintly, relief. He said, So you found me? The narrator said, I hope I am not intruding. Sensei said, Come in. They sat in a room that looked onto the small garden. Tea was brought by the woman, who turned out to be Sensei's wife, whose name was Shizu. She served it with the practiced ease of someone who has served tea in this room to many people, and she smiled at the narrator with a warmth that surprised him slightly, as though she were pleased he had come, as though visitors were not entirely common. She left them alone. They talked, or rather, Sensei talked, and the narrator listened, and occasionally asked something, and the conversation moved in the way that conversations move when one person has something they want to say and the other person is genuinely willing to hear it. Sensei talked about Tokyo, about the university, about the particular quality of the educated young men he saw around him, their ambition, their certainty, their complete confidence that the future would reward their intelligence. He spoke of this without contempt, but without warmth either. He spoke of it the way a man speaks of weather patterns, as observable phenomena, neither good nor bad, simply characteristic of the season. The narrator asked, Did you feel that way when you were young? Sensei was quiet for a moment. He said, I felt everything very strongly when I was young. Whether any of it was right, I am still not certain. He said it in a tone that closed the subject without quite locking it. The narrator understood not to push. They finished their tea. The narrator stood to leave. Sensei walked him to the gate and they stood there for a moment in the autumn evening, with the street quiet around them, and the light going gold in the way it does in Tokyo in October. Sensei said, "Come again if you want to." The narrator said, "I will." He walked back through the city feeling something that he would have had difficulty naming, not happiness exactly, but something in the same family, a sense of having been admitted somewhere, of a door, not thrown open, but unlocked. He came back the following week, and the week after that, and the week after that. Over the course of the autumn he became a regular visitor to Sensei's house, arriving on no fixed schedule, staying for an hour or two, drinking tea in the room that looked onto the garden. Sensei was always there. Shizu was often there, coming and going with the quiet purposefulness of a woman who runs a household efficiently and without drama. The narrator grew comfortable in the house. More comfortable, he sometimes thought, than he was anywhere else in Tokyo. There was a quality of safety in it that he could not entirely explain, not the safety of warmth or excitement, but the safety of a place that expected nothing of you except your honest presence. Sensei, for his part, maintained his characteristic reserve. He was not cold, he was never cold, exactly. But he kept a certain distance, as though there were a room inside him that he would show you the door to but would not invite you to enter. The narrator accepted this. He was 20 years old and unacquainted with the specific shape of adult grief, but he understood instinctively that Sensei's reserve was not indifference. It was the opposite of indifference. It was the reserve of a man who cares too much and has learned to be careful about it. One afternoon, walking together after their tea, they passed a cemetery. Sensei stopped at the gate. He said, "There is someone I visit here. Would you mind waiting?" The narrator said of course, and waited by the gate while Sensei went in alone, walking along a path between the stones with the particular purposefulness of someone who knows exactly where they are going. He was gone for perhaps 15 minutes. When he came back his expression was the same as always, or almost the same. There was something slightly more settled in it, as though the visit had accomplished something he had needed to accomplish. The narrator asked, "A friend?" Sensei said, "Yes." He did not say anything else about it. They walked on. The narrator did not ask again, but he thought about it, about who this friend was, about what had brought Sensei to stand at a grave on an autumn afternoon with that expression of settled sorrow. He added it to the collection of things about Sensei that he did not understand, and could not stop thinking about. He visited more frequently as winter came on. The conversations deepened, or seemed to. It was difficult to say, with Sensei, whether depth was being added or simply revealed. He spoke sometimes about loneliness, about the particular loneliness of educated people who had thought their way out of the consolations that less thoughtful people enjoyed without questioning. He spoke about trust, about how difficult it was, and how necessary, and how easily destroyed. He said once, "If you love someone, be careful. Love is not enough protection against the things that loving someone can lead you to do." The narrator was not sure what to make of this. He was young enough to believe that loving someone was straightforwardly good, that it made people better rather than worse. He stored the remark away without fully understanding it. He met Shizu more often now, and found that he liked her genuinely, not in the complicated way he felt about Sensei, but simply and without reservation, the way you like someone who is kind without making a performance of it. She sometimes joined their conversations, and contributed to them with a directness that surprised him. She was not an ornament in that house. She was a person, with opinions and observations, and Sensei listened to her with a respect that was evident and unperformed. But there was something between them, between Sensei and Shizu, that the narrator could feel without being able to name. Not unhappiness, not tension, not the coiled atmosphere of a troubled marriage. Something subtler, a quality of careful regard, as though they were both